With our great controversies and the Rabbi seminar and reminding us of Jerusalem. And now this week's topic is Jewish unity. Was it ever a real thing? Can it be? So in January, when I was at my rabbinic conference for the Jewish Renewal Rabbis, Ohala, was held in Philadelphia this year. And Rabbi Amichai Lau Levi, who I believe I shared something about him when we were talking about Zionism. He proposed that Judaism was born divided following the split of the land of Israel into two kingdoms after the death of King Solomon. So this goes back, 3,000 years approximately. The kings of Israel and Judah. And each kingdom for him represents a different approach to engaging with the non-Jewish world. According to Rabbi Amichai, we can find the thread of this conflict right down to the present day, where it still threatens to divide Israel and world Jewry between Orthodox nationalists and secular universalists, and those of us, of course, who are not at either extreme or pole, but somewhere in the middle trying to figure it out. So as I asked at the beginning of this class, is it only the threat of anti-Semitism that keeps us united, or can we somehow find our solidarity, unity, or pluralism amidst profound differences? That's what we'll be looking at. And don't worry if that's a lot of information, because we're going to return to the different things. And if I forget, be sure to remind me that I will share a link to Rabbi Amichai Lau Levi's website, because he gives a whole in-depth course on this very topic with all kinds of resources and videos and so on. Okay, now, first though, this blessing for the study of Torah. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. Holy One, a blessing, your presence fills creation. You've made us holy with mitzvot and bid us to engage with words of Torah. And so, we've noted throughout this class that Jewish divisions are as old as our history. And so maybe it'd be fun if, let's say one person, maybe Stan or Carol, either one of you, well, why not? I'll read one side and you read the other. Can we do that? Okay, like this. We'll go across the table. Got me? I tried to put these in chronological order. Okay. So on the one hand, we Jews were Hellenists, but on the other hand, we were
Maccabees.
On the one hand, we were Samaritans, but on the other hand,
we were Judeans.
On the one hand, we were Sadducees.
But on the other hand, we were Pharisees.
Now, we were also Karaites, but some of us were
Rabbinites.
In the Middle Ages, some of us were rationalists, like Maimonides, and some of us were
medieval mystics.
Well, when it came to this new crazy Hasidic group about 300 years ago, some of us were called Mitnagdim. We opposed them, and some of us were
Hasidim.
Yeah. Some of us identify as Orthodox and others as
Hasidim. Or Reform.
Reform, yes. And also all kinds of other denominations, as we discussed. And as we confronted anti-Semitism in the modern world, some of us were Bundists, socialists who wanted to stay put and try to bring about a socialist utopia where we lived. And others of us were
Zionists.
Right, saying that Jews will never really be able to achieve safety and equality in Europe, so we need to have our own country. So that's something that we learned about. And if any of this you missed, you can go back and see the videos. They were sent to you in your email, but they're also on our YouTube channel. We didn't get literally into every single one of these, but I'm happy to share. And also the book on the Jewish controversies that I shared that's out of print. Now I have 2 copies if somebody wants to borrow that too.
What's the image, Rabbi?
Well, the image, here?
Oops, no, it's the previous slide.
Wait a second. Oh, I'm going the wrong way. That is just stock photo that I wanted to show contrasts. It has no deep symbolic meaning. Okay.
Okay.
It's just a decoration. Yeah. Okay. But all right. So this one is a beautiful image. Now, let me stop sharing for a minute. Hello, Carol. Welcome. Good evening. So, last time, I think in our last class, it was Jerusalem Day, right, in Israel. And I talked about it, we're talking about Zionism and its detractors. So I talked about the ultra-nationalist Jews who meant mostly like very nationalistic Orthodox, modern Orthodox Jews who are celebrating the reunification of Jerusalem in 1967 by marching through the old city with flags en masse, protected by the police, and oftentimes they are harassing or, doing damage to stores and things of Palestinians or Israeli Arabs that are living there. And then I mentioned that some people, on the other hand, come along and share like flowers and love and protection. And there are other groups that do that. So it's going to show you a little of that because I think that shows, again, this big division, a very big division that's going on in Israel. And I almost hesitate to put this on the recording, but I didn't want to put this on the images. But if you are looking at the news, you saw that a cabinet minister in Israel was definitely humiliating, harassing, and mistreating some people who had come, this flotilla of the people that came to they're going to bring supplies to Gaza, but they knew they'd be intercepted, and they were brought into a port in Israel. And instead of just sending them to their consulates to send them home, he made a big point of really harassing them in a very, very degrading way. Did anyone else see this?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, we did.
What an idiot. What an idiot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he was even mildly rebuked by the prime minister, but it created a big international, brouhaha, I guess. And the same fellow who had I believe, at his birthday party, a cake with a noose on it to represent the goals of a law which did pass to have the death penalty for terrorists, but only Arabs, not Jewish. And so this is one side of Jewish nationalism today. I mean, I can't just erase that happened, but I didn't want to share pictures of them. But on the other hand, there are those like these women. This looks like the Jerusalem I would hope to see, right? There's a group called Tag Meir. So among some of the more again, nationalistic, you could say extreme right wing, settlers or other extremely I'm just blanking on the word, but the religious Zionists who are very zealous, I guess is the word. There's a group called Tag Mechir, which means like price tag. Mm-hmm. And if anything happens, like if a Palestinian or an Arab does something to a Jew, they'll go and take revenge, like burning down some Arab house or something like that. So another group started called Tag Meir, which means Meir is, giving light. We want to shine a light on the good things. So during Jerusalem Day, this woman, is sharing flowers with a Jewish woman and a Palestinian woman together. So in recent years, as I've already summarized for you, and you can read there, Jerusalem Day has become this flashpoint, and Palestinians are kind of hiding from Jewish extremists. I mean, it's very disturbing to think that this is what our ancestors did during pogroms, right? And it becomes ugly and violent. And, a colleague of mine was there, and the police would not let them be there, but they would let the demonstrators be there, who were, even once they found out that they were like left-wing peaceniks or whatever, young people were spitting on them and throwing water on them. Not nice, right? And this happened again, but the story doesn't end there, because this group called ALMEP, ALLMEP, standing for Alliance for Mideast Peace, got together, as they do every year, to do the antidote. So this is a different kind of Judaism, right? Including a group called Standing Together. We talked about them before. In the email, I shared information on these groups. And then they would kind of protect them. Tag Meir, Women Wage Peace is another wonderful group, and they're carrying flowers and so on. And also members of ALMEP is our friends from Lisan. If you remember, we had the speakers from Lisan, including Jackie and Eric Land's daughter, and her Arab or Palestinian Israeli partner, who are teaching each other one another's language, and they're part of that coalition. So I'm bringing this here just to say how real this is, how divided we are, and what very different visions people have for Israel, and of course for Judaism in general. Let's see what I got next. And okay, I'm going to share a couple other things. And I know that Nick had an article he wanted to tell us about. So we've always had a conflict in Judaism between the insular and the welcoming and more, you could say, universalistic, more open borders, more open doors. So, and it's pertinent at this time of year. We recall that Ezra the priest, when the people were coming back to Judea after the Babylonian conquest, 586 BCE, they're exiled, the leaders are exiled to Babylonia, like modern day Iraq/Iran. And as their Cyrus the Great of Persia came, conquered them, and let people go back. And when they came back, Ezra the priest told them, let me have somebody read this. Who would like to read this from the book of Ezra? Anybody?
I'll do it. It's Nick.
Thank you, Nick.
We've always had a conflict between the insular. Then Ezra the priest, who had come back to direct the rebuilding of the temple in 5th century BCE, got up and said to them, "You have trespassed by bringing home foreign women, thus aggravating the guilt of Israel. So now make confession to the Lord, God of your fathers, and do his will, and separate yourself from the peoples of the land and from the foreign women." The entire congregation responded in a loud voice, "We must surely do just as you say." Book of Ezra, chapters 9 and 10.
So that's right in the Bible, the book of Ezra, and near the end of the Hebrew Bible, the Tanakh. This is really the beginning of this idea of this extreme anxiety about intermarriage. Because if you look earlier in the Bible, right? Let me can you think of any famous people early in the Torah who were married to someone who was not from the Hebrew tribe or the Israelite tribes? Or in the Moses, right? He's married to a Midianite, for goodness sake. Okay. There's others.
Isn't the book of Ruth an antidote to this?
That's what we're gonna. Very good, thank you. So now for Shavuot, it's important to remember that we read a story that is like the antidote to that. Would somebody else read this? So we have this conflict between the closed door and the welcoming. Someone can jump in and read.
I'll do it.
Okay.
And the open and welcoming. The book of Ruth, read on Shavuot, can be understood as a polemic for welcoming the stranger and against the book of Ezra. Ruth can be read as a celebration of the Jew by choice and the co-traveler, and of intermarriage. A foreigner and outsider became the ancestor of the Davidic monarchy.
Right. So not only was Ruth, not only is she a foreigner, she's foreign born. We've studied this in more depth in the past, right? But she's from this Moab, this tribe that you're not even supposed to marry into them for generations. And she comes with, she's loyal to her. She was married to a Judean man, and she comes back home with her widowed mother-in-law, Ruth, Naomi, excuse me, and she is accepted. And she says, where the famous lines, "Wherever you go, I will go," right? "Your people shall be my people, and your God shall be my God." And this is like the basis of conversion to Judaism, something that wasn't even in Ezra's playbook at all. So she does embrace Judaism. And no, it doesn't say that she went to the mikveh or, went to a Beit Din. She just joined the tribe. And not just that, but she becomes like the ancestor of King David. So we're seeing two different, so far I've showed you already some of these tensions, right? We saw in modern times, these people who are acting hateful to other inhabitants of the old city of Jerusalem, who happen to be Muslim or Christian as well. And we have those who are showing love and support and giving out, not just giving out flowers, they do that, but they also like look after people, protect people. In fact, I saw a video of a woman, an Arab woman was in labor, and they were taking her. Okay, so this was not like something on TikTok. Some medics who were Orthodox Jews were like protecting her and making sure she didn't get harmed while they were taking her so she could go to the hospital. Okay, so we have lots of different people. It's not only Orthodox versus secular. It's just people with different attitudes. All right, so let's keep it going. Now we have, so now if we go to this divided kingdoms, or as one scholar, Dahlia Marks, called it kind of tongue-in-cheek, the original two-state solution. But this happened like in the 10th century before the Common Era. So this is like, 3 millennia ago. After King Solomon's death, the kingdom was divided into the northern kingdom of Israel. The northern kingdom was called Israel, and the southern part was called Judah, and later, like in Roman times, called Judea. The northern kingdom in 722 BCE was destined to be conquered by the Assyrians, leaving the 10 tribes that lived there to either hurry south and be absorbed into Judah or be scattered around the world, making them the famous lost tribes, right? And so you can see what the borders were then, at least according to, this is Wikipedia, I think. So but the problem is that when we read the story of these divided kingdoms and what they stood for, we're reading it based on one opinion, which is the southern kingdom's opinion. And that kingdom, of course, was destroyed or was conquered in the southern kingdom was conquered in 586 before the Common Era by the Babylonians, but approximately 70 years later, they were allowed, those who wished to come back, some of them stayed in Babylonia. Okay. So, would somebody like to read this for us about the divided kingdoms, please? Anybody?
Well, it's Nick again. I mean, I didn't hear any.
Well, Nick, go for it. Yeah. People are not up for reading tonight, but I appreciate everyone's street. Okay. All right, go ahead.
Primary historical and religious accounts of the ancient kingdoms of Israel and Judah, preserved in the Hebrew Bible, particularly the Book of Kings and Chronicles, were written, edited, and compiled by scribes and priests based in Jerusalem, the capital of the Kingdom of Judah. This historical skew significantly shapes how we perceive the two kingdoms with a Judahite bias. Because the biblical authors were loyal to the Davidic dynasty and the Jerusalem temple, the northern kingdom of Israel, often called Ephraim, is frequently depicted through a negative lens. Northern kings are often criticized for religious syncretism and idol worship.
Thank you. And this is what I had thought about it this way until I did attend this lecture with our keynote speaker, Rabbi Amichai Lau-Levi. By the way, he's a rabbi of a place called Labshul in Jerusalem, and he's the heir to a long, long, long line of rabbis, but he's definitely different than his ancestors, but we can learn about him another time. At any rate, he's saying that for him, the northern kingdom was that kind of Judaism that's more open, because there was more blending with other peoples. Partly that's the result of their geography where they were. There was more different peoples blending in. They were a little more open to different religions being observed, or different modes of worship and gods, but even while being primarily Israelites and believing in the Israelite God. And Judea became focused on the temple in Jerusalem, and became under the reign of King Josiah. There was a religious reform where it became very, very much focused only on the worship of Yud-He Vav-He, the God that we read about, our God, right? The one God, and saying the others are not legit. Okay. Now, another thing is that the person who founded this kingdom in the north is Yerovam, or Jeroboam in English. So the southern kingdom after Solomon, let me just stop share for a minute. After Solomon died, the southern kingdom is inherited by Rehoboam, his son, who is not very nice, because the people in the north, these tribes in the north, were so put upon by Solomon. Solomon, you think what do you think of when I say King Solomon? What comes to mind? What adjectives? Just say them or write them down. King Solomon is
wise,
right? Okay, all right. So he's wise, and he has these very, wonderful decisions, and he can speak the languages of all the animals and people. But we can see in the Bible also that he had lots of foreign wives, and he had big building projects for which he conscripted people, and he collected a lot of taxes. And the people in the north particularly felt this. And when Jeroboam got into power, Rehoboam, the son of Solomon, he said, I'm going to be worse than my dad was, right? I'm going to make it harder for you. So they rebelled, and Jeroboam, who had been an official of King Solomon's, was told by Ahiah the Shilonite, a prophet, that he was going to lead the north. Okay, so let's read again. Nonetheless, the story gets told by the people in Judah later in the Bible. They tell the story, and so they give a negative view of him. And there was a great article. I'm going to share these in the chat in a bit. But this professor, Dahlia Marks, Hebrew Union College in Jerusalem, the Reform movement, wrote a very good article about how we might look at him differently. Okay, so I would like a reader, maybe someone who hasn't read, want to step up and read?
I'll step up even though I've read.
Well, is there anybody else who hasn't read and wants to read? Okay, so it's George and Nick tonight that want to read. Okay, so George, go ahead.
The traditional Jewish view. Jeroboam, son of Nebat, is remembered as one of Judaism's great villains. The Mishnah lists him among the kings who have no share in the world to come. The Talmud notes that he debased the people, caused strife among the people, and created a divide between Israel and God. His name becomes shorthand for leadership that leads a community astray.
Okay, now she says, though, we could look at him a different way. So this is her perspective from this a very nice article that I'll give you the link to. So go ahead. You continue, George.
Historic perspective. Before becoming king, Jeroboam was an official under Solomon who witnessed heavy taxation and forced labor. He became associated with the northern dissatisfaction over economic burdens imposed by Jerusalem. His revolt was political and social, and unlike many biblical power struggles, it was largely nonviolent. Professor Marx suggests he may be seen not simply as a rebel, but as someone advocating for neglected populations in the north, a populist. But the Judean perspective wrote the story.
Okay. So in the southern kingdom, the line of David continued like a dynasty, right? The son Solomon, his son's, and then in the north, though, it was a lot more unstable. There was a lot of turnover, different kings, and just something to know. Okay, but the way that those kings were viewed as kind of being wicked would often be because the people in the south did not like them, and they told the story. So now even the story of the golden calf, I think this is so interesting. You know, the story of the golden calf, which hopefully we're familiar, and I think it kind of goes with Shavuot, because Shavuot is the giving of the Torah. And when the Torah was given, the Torah tells us that, you know, Moses is up there for 40 days and nights on Mount Sinai. And when he's a little late coming down, everybody goes bonkers. And they get, with the help of Aaron, his brother, build a golden calf or a young bull. And they like worship it and go nuts. And, you know, Moses comes down and breaks the tablets and they start all over, right? Familiar, I believe. Yes? If not, go to Exodus and chapter 32 and read it. Yes. But anyway, Professor Richard Elliott Friedman, who wrote a great book that you might want to read called Who Wrote the Bible, very readable book to understand how the Bible maybe came to be, and other works that he wrote, said that actually this story was not really from that period, at least according to scholars. It didn't really go all the way back to the time of the Exodus from Egypt. Or maybe it took a story from then and put an overlay on it, right? That was really talking about these divided kingdoms. We can't get away from them. Israel in the north and Judea in the south. Because after the kingdom split, not only did the new king Jeroboam, not only did he, you know, make a new kingdom, but he was a religious reformer. He changed the religion because the temple was down in Jerusalem, but he made a sanctuary in Bethel and one in Dan, and at different borders of the kingdom, he put big statues of golden bulls, reportedly declaring, "Behold your gods, O Israel, who brought you up from Egypt." That's the same line used in Exodus 32 about the calf, the golden calf, that Aaron says, "These are your gods, O Israel, who brought you out from Egypt." So this is like a polemical story, if y'all are following with me. Professor Friedman argues the Exodus story deliberately echoes Jeroboam's shrines, but the calves were not really viewed as gods at all. They were viewed as a throne for the divine. They're holding up the presence of God over the entire northern kingdom and making an alternative to the Jerusalem temple. And he believes that, you know, the people who are putting together, I mean, there were different layers to this story. There's more to it than that. But they were projecting their current division of the northern and southern kingdom and sending, you know, excuse me. I gotta get out of here. Back onto the story of the Exodus and the golden calf. Now, did everyone follow me with that? Could you follow it? No? Okay, well, I mean, again, we know the story. Do you know the story of the golden calf? Basically, right? The people are very worried about Moses not coming back, and they with the help of Aaron, they built a golden calf and worship that. But Richard Elliott Friedman, who's written a lot about, he's a professor, he's written a lot about the Bible and the different layers and the different voices in the Bible. shows the various pieces of evidence, including these two lines from different parts of the Bible, to say that this was really a nod at and kind of a way of pointing at the apostasy of the north, and they're putting their golden calf. They literally had golden calves there, or golden bulls, and each border, which they said were the throne of God. And the story of in the book of Exodus was to kind of criticize that and other stuff. There was more to it than that. All right. Okay, so you may be going, well, okay, why should we care? This happened 3,000 years ago. Well, let's now bring it a little more into the modern times with my friend Rabbi Amichai Lau-Levi. So again, anybody want to read about this, because he's taking it into the modern period a little, saying that this conflict of that northern kingdom and southern kingdom continues, are what they stood for. So somebody want to read this for us?
I'll read.
Thank you,
Rabbi
Eric.
Amichai Lau-Levi argues that Jewish history is often told by the winners. In the biblical story of the divided kingdom, Jerusalem and Judah become the center of power, and later biblical editors told the story from that perspective. Northern Israel, with its more mixed population, openness to surrounding cultures, and alternative religious centers, came to be remembered primarily through the language of sin and deviation. History is often written by the winners. The Northern Kingdom became remembered not for its complexity, but for its failures.
So in a sense, he wants to say that they represent a kind of Judaism that is here today. And he says, and this is what I took in my notes when I listened to him, that authentic Judaism is about change and difference. And what he said is, I'm not a response to authentic Judaism. I am authentic Judaism. And his brand of Judaism is very much more creative and even out there. And there is a documentary about him called Sabbath Queen, because he actually, before becoming a rabbi, coming from this long, long line of rabbis, he was first a drag queen, and then he came back to being, a little more traditional, became a rabbi, but very obviously gay and very much supporting gay rights in the Jewish community. Although he went to the Jewish Theological Seminary, the conservative seminary, and he started Lab Shul, an extremely experimental religious community in New York City. And he's from Israel again, and his uncle is the chief rabbi, or was the chief rabbi of Israel. So he says, but I'm not a response to authentic Judaism. I am authentic Judaism. And I'd like us to try saying that and thinking that for ourselves. We, as Jewish renewal, reform, modern, secular, whatever you want to call us, whatever identity we have, we are not a response to authentic Judaism. We are also authentic Judaism, because Judaism has always had different expressions, going back to, of course, back to our earliest ancestors, and certainly back to this divided kingdoms, which had different maybe ways of approaching Judaism. But the story got told by one side. So I only have a couple of slides left, then I want to really open it up from your points of view. So this is another thinker I hope you would hear about, Yehuda Kurtzer. He is Yehuda Kurtzer is president of the Hartman Institute. Have you heard of it? If you have, kind of wave at me. The Hartman Institute in Jerusalem. It's a very pluralistic, center for study, and it's a think tank and teaching. It's in Jerusalem, started by Rabbi David Hartman, continued with his son, Rabbi Daniel Hartman. And now they have programs in the United States too. So anyway, he wrote a really good essay, although it was before October 7th, but I'm going to give you the links to all these essays, which were shared. Well, I found them in different places. Some were shared by Amichai. So he said that he grew up in the heyday of pluralism, Jewish pluralism. And he went to a prestigious like fellowship for young Jews in college or teenagers in high school who were from many different denominations. He was raised Orthodox, others were raised Reform or something else. And they were together, and that was a really eye-opening thing for all of them. It was important to them. And they were not alone, because it's also been called the golden age of American Judaism too. Pluralism became much more accepted, especially from two important figures. Rabbi Yitz Greenberg, who's a living rabbi, modern, very, very modern Orthodox, who founded Klal, which stood for Jewish Center for Learning and Leadership in the United States. And the whole point of Klal is to bring, sorry, I want to, all right, I'm trying to not share. We're not sharing. Are we? Sorry. Klal, because I remember when Klal started, like 1980s or something, and my mom even wrote for Yitz Greenberg. She did editing for him of some of his writing. And he's with us, thank God, today. Now he made Aliyah. But he really was, according to Kurtzer, Rabbi Yitz Greenberg was responding in a lot of ways to the Holocaust. He said the Holocaust broke all the paradigms. We can't just say we were punished for our sins when we look at the Holocaust and the children who suffered and whatnot. Everything's broken down, and we have he's called a voluntary covenant, which we all join in the way we want, and we have amazingly done that and built new institutions in the diaspora and in Israel. And now we should, for the sake of pluralism, or for the sake of the Jewish people, experience pluralism, get together and learn from one another. And then Kurtzer says that Rabbi David Hartman in Israel came at it from a different perspective. He said that let's not make everything based on the Holocaust, right? And on our suffering. We talked about that before, right? But in fact, that the birth of Israel is the big challenge that should bring Jews of all strains together, because this is something that we haven't been able to do for 2,000 years, like be in charge of our own destiny and creating our own, society. And that's why Jerusalem should be the center of this pluralism. Okay. So Kurtzer's saying that for decades, pluralism ruled the day, ruled the Jewish community. And then it got a little bit kind of stale, because it sort of, I mean, he wrote a really long essay, which I will share with you momentarily. But he said, I think basically it got to be just a kind of logistical pluralism. You know what I mean? Like, you go, we'll all study Torah, and then you go in this room and do your Orthodox minyan, and you go in that room and do your Reform minyan, and we don't have to really face any big things. And the thing that has really has really highlighted that, of course, is Zionism and Israel and young people on campus with Hillels. And he wrote this before October 7th, right? But Hillel is really struggling with this, because Hillel houses on campuses are supposed to be very pluralistic places that any Jewish student could come. And yet they weren't accepting of non-Zionist, anti-Zionist Jews, at least at that point. And they're like safe spaces for Zionist Jews. Interesting for Kurtzer to say this, since he's a Zionist and he's, involved in this Israeli institution. All right, let's go back to his slide, though. I'm going to go backwards, and we will just finish reading that and finish this up so I can get your feedback here. You see, I'm down to the last two slides. Okay. So would somebody read this slide? Is anybody up for reading it for us? On Yehuda Kurtzer. Oh dear. Wait, now I have to get all the way. Okay, go back. Sorry. Let's see. Guys, I'm sorry. It's really hard for me to start this, to start at that point because of my lack of skills. I'm screen sharing, huh?
Yeah, you are. Just scroll down on the side to the slide that you want.
Okay, right. But I can't even see it anymore. I'm going to stop sharing and start it over. Okay. Let's try again. You really have to have just a very non-sensitive ego to do these things because I usually end up feeling like an idiot by the end of the class. All right, so here's Kurtz's.
There you go. There you go.
I know I wanted to make it full screen, but I'm not going to try because I can't reach the little thing I need to press. So would somebody read this about Yehuda Kurtzer's philosophy about pluralism?
Oh, is it? I'll do it.
Go ahead, do it. Go for it. It's fine.
Just do it.
Okay.
Just do it.
Yeah.
Yehuda Kurtzer argues that for much of the late 20th century, American Jewish life institutions celebrated a big tent model. Orthodox, conservative, reform, secular, and politically diverse Jews shared common spaces. Pioneers of this pluralism included Rabbi Yitz Greenberg from Klal and Rabbi David Hartman in Israel. But polarization has increasingly replaced those broad coalitions with communities organized around agreement and ideological sorting. We've reduced pluralism to logistical compromises and ideological safe spaces. Quote, the heyday during which pluralism ruled in many arenas of organized Jewish life appears now to have passed. I believe this abandonment of pluralism to be a mistake. Can I just jump in there and say that?
Please do. Okay.
I mean, what he's saying there is really exactly what's happening throughout the world, really, because and certainly in this country,
Right.
It's not just the Jews. I mean, we are increasingly living in these silos where we only communicate with people who agree with us, who have the same viewpoint. I think so. I don't think it's a unique perspective. It's something that Jews are experiencing along with everyone else.
Thank you for mentioning that. And I think that there's an old saying, Jews are just like other people, only more so.
Yeah.
Right? Because we were, I've tried to show you throughout this throughout this whole series, we have been divided, and we've had lots of different groups, and sometimes we're barely speaking to each other. But when people attacked us from without, like after the Holocaust, then Jews coalesced. We came together. We're building Israel, and we're supporting each other. And now again, after October 7th, there's been kind of a lot of that going on, but there's also been the critiques, right, because of the Israeli response and the war, and that has led to a lot of gatekeeping, as we saw in the last class, that some people, not just one person, several Jewish leaders have come out and said, well, if you're not a Zionist, you can't even be really, how can you be a Jew? You're a Jew, but like you're outside of the pale. And it's almost like I said, like the wicked son at the Seder, right? Who's like, he would see it at Tzmomi Aklal. He's like, he's kofer be'ikar. He's a heretic, but not because he doesn't believe in God, but because he separates himself from the community and doesn't see himself as part of the story. But these young people today, some of them who are Jewish and are still, feeling very uncomfortable about Israel or Zionism, doesn't mean that they don't want to be part of the Jewish community. In fact, they are at the Seder, but they're just coming. Maybe you could consider them a wicked child, but at least they're there, right? This tests the limits of pluralism again. And that's okay. That has to do with Israel and Zionism, but I also think that in religious areas too, especially around women's role. Women are always a problem, because right now another of the legal things going on in Israel is that some people want to criminalize having non-Orthodox prayer at the Western Wall. This has been going on for a while. And people have gone to jail because they were doing already, because like women having a Torah service and, at the Western Wall with these women of the wall, but they want to make it like a 7-year prison term or something. I mean, this is in the Jewish state. So how far can pluralism go? Could you just say, well, it's pluralism? Well, does that mean you should just respect what they do? Or is it like, no, I have to stand up for what I believe in? I by the way, I put in the chat, I have put my links to the articles I mentioned, and we'll send that out later. And I know George shared with me some videos, and Nick, an article in Haaretz. He had a PDF. So if you can share them, if you would like, if you still want to share them with everybody, that's, very interesting, a reading for us. Here's my last slide, because we're going to come back to where we started in the first class, right? I said that there were kind of two theories about Jewish diversity. One was the postage stamp theory. And I told you a joke about a woman who goes into the post office and says, I want to buy Hanukkah stamps. And the clerk says, what denominations? And she goes, has it come to this? Okay, I'll take 10 Orthodox, 10 Reform, 10 Conservative, right? I mean, that's before forever stamps. Yeah. So in that view, I think it's kind of like that simplistic idea of pluralism, like, we're all just different denominations of the same stamp. Okay, that's okay. Now, the T essence theory of Judaism, I can't remember where I heard it, but it was kind of tongue-in-cheek from a writer who said that she had viewed the Orthodox as the essence of the tea. They're the ones doing it right, and we're the ones that water it down to make it drinkable for us. So it's saying like there's an authentic Judaism, a Torah true Judaism, it's some Orthodox call it, and then there's these kind of watered down versions. And what I've tried to do in this class is to get us away from that idea, to say, in fact, there's always been a lot of colorful stamps on Judaism. And in fact, there wasn't just one authentic way, and then, the rest of us watered it down. Now, of course, some people are more or less committed to Judaism, but there could be legitimately, in my view, of course, different expressions. And as I've learned more and more, a lot of the things that have become, or at least some of the things that have become really viewed as halachot and they're strictly followed are of pretty recent origins. Like we were talking about the laws of counting the Omer and all the restrictions. Some of that doesn't go, didn't go back to the Torah. Things were added on later sometimes. So what I would like to know, Marty's on his way. Okay, we're about to finish up here anyway, but I wanted to get your point of view from this class. Like, how do you now view Jewish controversies? And what can bring us together besides the other people out there that hate us? What can bring us together and help us find our, Am Yisrael Chai, the Jewish people's vitality together? And I'd love to hear your thoughts about it. Just unmute and let us know what you think. Okay.
I think we all...
Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Eric and then Nick. Okay.
Well, I think historically, if you go back to the first revolt against the Roman Empire, where Jews were killing one another, and there was horrible bloodshed. There was a lot taken from that. We lost independence because of a Jew against Jew fighting, physical fighting, not ideas, but physically trying to kill one another. And I think we have to go back to that and remember that we can have civil discussions, but if it moves on from that, then history could repeat itself, I guess is what I'm saying.
Thank you for bringing that up. I mean, as unpleasant as it is, because if you remember when I talked on one sermon about Rabbi Small, I think this was in the Rabbi Small Mysteries, he said, Jews will we'll have these violent arguments, but we won't physically attack each other. That's what makes us Jewish, and not so sure that's always true. Obviously, in history, it wasn't always true. There were civil wars between the different tribes. That's why in the book of Judges, you read about this violence between the tribes. And then in the story of Hanukkah, we did talk about that the Maccabees in some ways were very violent, and there was a lot of there was like civil war among the Jewish factions. And I did talk about the Zealots. I think the Zealots, not only were they ready to fight to the death, but yeah, they were ready to kill other Jews. And in fact, like Bar Kokhba, the fact that people that wanted to just fight to the death and be zealous really brought about disaster. And the rabbinic point of view was more, let's compromise, let's survive, and right? And we can't always be zealous about our goals. Okay, and we got something else in the chat. Ritual practices bring us together. Thoughts? You want to talk about that, Harvey?
Well, we all celebrate Shabbat. We all celebrate Rosh Hashanah. We celebrate Yom Kippur. We come together, whether we're not in the same building, but every Jew is celebrating. I mean, we're all of one mind in that, in remembering our holidays, in celebrating our ritual practice. Yeah. Every Saturday and Friday we celebrate Shabbat.
Right. Well, we do have these same holidays, and of course, though, we don't all celebrate them the same way.
No.
And like in Israel, there have been Jews, a very, Haredi, very Orthodox, ultras, who were like throwing rocks at people who were driving through their neighborhood on Shabbat. So that doesn't always mean we're tolerant, but ideally, yes. When I was in San Antonio growing up, every synagogue would send a telegram to the other synagogues to wish them Yeshana Tova, and all the telegrams were read aloud at the beginning of the service. And then they changed it to faxes later on. And then I don't know what, they just DM'd each other. I don't know if it still goes on. They tweeted, but it was a deal. It was a thing. And that's why I mentioned at the beginning of the high holiday services in the morning, if you're there at the beginning, connect yourself with all the Jews around the world that are celebrating this. But by no means are all Jews doing it, but it could be something that brings us together. Okay, Susan Towers, yeah. Unmute. You're muted. Yes.
I'm working on.
You're good. You're good.
I just without focusing on the negative of disagreements, I think one of the reasons why Judaism is such a rich culture, which it is a culture too, is because there are so many different opinions and different interpretations. And I know it's kind of humorous to say you have two Jews and three opinions, but I think that's very intellectually stimulating and very creative. And obviously the negative side is there's a lot of disagreements and
right
to the extreme.
Well, I think, so true. I'm glad you brought that up too. You're all bringing up I guess I put all these plants in the audience, to bring up exactly the things I should have said. But if you remember, we talked about this on the high holidays too, kind of like the Jewish way to disagree. And I brought somebody from our congregation talking about the builders movement with Michael Johnston. And I talked about how the Talmud does have a lot of material about the respecting one another and disagreements for the sake of heaven. And that is part of Judaism, not a nonconformity of thought. And it should be that way, right? And that disagreements for the sake of heaven. So kind of didn't see where else I was going to go with that. But all right, I'll come back to that in a minute. But I think that's a very important part of Judaism, and hopefully I'm showing that in this class too, right? It's not just that we should all be the same. Oh, I know what I want to say. I want to say that Yehuda Kurtzer, I think he would agree with you, right? That pluralism is also arguing and not just being safe and having everybody just people that I feel comfortable with. And that's kind of the direction we've gone. And I guess Nick says that's the way we've all gone. Sorry, Nick, I kind of skipped over you. What would you like to share?
Well, I think, what's the saying that the more things change, the more they stay the same.
Yes.
And I think that's true with the Jews and Jewish history.
Mhm.
And if you don't have that longer perspective, if you're just sitting here today and you're looking at what's going on
Yeah.
in this country, in Israel, and in
Mhm.
Europe to the Jews, you could throw up your hands and say it's the end. It's going to be all over, right? But the fact is that this is just one of those periods in history where there are many challenges, and we still exist. We still survive. We continue. So, I think you need a certain element of optimism when you look at what's going on today.
But you also need,
Thank you.
I agree with that, but you also need vigilance and a
Sure.
and a desire and a need to protect the pluralism and to protect, as Rabbi Julie said, arguments in the sake of heaven. I'm referring obliquely to the ambassador from Israel shockingly calling J Street a cancer, which I'm sure you all read about. And what I was surprised was how little the Jewish community actually responded. I mean, there were responses. There's no question about that. And there was a petition, and I read most of the petition was signed by progressive people. But that kind of thing has to be totally condemned. There were some members of Congress, including AOC, who is not the most friendly to Israel, as we all know. But she was the most vociferous condemnation of the rabbi of the ambassador, which I thought was wonderful, given the fact of her other politics. But it's important that we keep going. We can't take for granted, or we can't just say we've survived all these years and that means we're going to survive for the next millenniums. I think we all have to be vigilant, and we have to take strong stands against people like that horrible ambassador, and also his boss, who was very timid in responding to that also. Then it's important that we all do that.
Sure.
I think those are the same kinds of challenges we have, and we talked about on Yom Kippur too, that I think we feel existentially threatened today more about all the differences that we have. And I know doing an exercise on, I was with a group of rabbis doing an exercise on how you defend the points of view you disagree with, which is a very Talmudic. In fact, the Talmud says you should do that, right? And yet people were just so uncomfortable about it. And it's gotten worse over the years because people feel like the very ideas that people have different ideas is an existential threat. And, it's all been fostered in different ways that we know by our current media climate and social media, and who knows what with AI, gracious me. So, but I'm glad to hear, Nick, that you're optimistic because you shared a very pessimistic article with me. But
I'm trying, one has to be. And I absolutely agree with Stan that yes, we do have to remain vigilant, and we do have to push back against the haters and against the people who would like us not to be around,
right.
and Israel not to be around. So no dispute there. I'm just putting into chat here a little bit of advertising.
Okay.
I'm going to be teaching.
Great.
I'm going to be
Wonderful.
teaching.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, I'm going to be teaching a course on the Kindertransport in the fall.
Oh, okay.
So If anyone's interested, you can email me and I can provide more information. So it's off
Thank you
topic.
so
I'm
much.
sorry.
No,
but,
that's very. I'm very glad to know about that, and I think we'll be interested in with our Holocaust remembrances that we do, and we can share this in some way with the community. You know, we have Reba here from communications. Maybe as it gets closer, we can share this as a community event too with the congregation. So thank you. So I guess I'll.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Yes. Okay, George, I think it's getting a little late, but give us a quick wrap up.
Just one thing for Nick. David Hirschler, who's a historian, wrote a book on the Kinta train.
Yes.
A member of
You're
our
aware of that?
in our
Yes.
congregation.
Okay.
Yes, I was aware of that, and actually, I discovered I get their magazine, the Kinder Transport magazine, and I discovered someone up in Wilmington who was on the same transport, the same train, as my father.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, it's just it's incredible. Some of the, and there've been a number of documentaries made about it as well.
Yeah.
So one won the Academy Award.
I think we can that's a kind of hopeful note to end on, to think about how here you are teaching others, and we have several people here who are teaching others about Judaism, about their own life experiences, and I've written books and so on. And so I'll just conclude with one bit of midrash that when we left Egypt, the midrash says that we, as the sea split, it actually split into 12 lanes, one for each tribe, to show that there's all these different ways of being Jewish, or Israelite, or whatever it was back then, and that there's different paths, and we need to pick our own path, and that's okay. They're all pretty legitimate. Let's say they're all paths to get through. And then, though, when we came to Sinai, it says we're unified. We were one person. It's like in the singular. Rabbi Ariel was telling us that. So we experienced unity, because when it comes to receiving Torah, that Torah tzivah lanu Moshe Morashat Kilad Yaakov, that Torah that we got, that Moses brought down, that belongs to all of us. So in fact, that is a unifying, that can be, and such groups as Cage and Limud and Yom Limuds and other groups, other learning programs are the opportunity to find Torah bringing us together. So I hope tonight Torah's brought us together, and throughout this class it has, and I really appreciate you all being here and being part of the journey. And we'll be sending out videos, and if you want to see anything again, and I hope you caught some of those resources, and we'll share them again too. Okay, Chag Sameach to everybody.
Chag Sameach.
Bye.
Thank you very much, Rabbi.
Bye.
Good
Chag
series.
Sameach.
Thank you.